people, many of whom, watch Tucker Carlson's show and are inclined already to be skeptical of American support for Ukraine, would hearing directly from Putin potentially erode that further, not just in the halls of Congress, but among the people?
The American people know well who's at fault here. And I think they know that there was no grounds whatsoever for the invasion on February 22nd, 2 years ago. He invaded a neighboring country without provocation. Ukraine wasn't a threat to anybody, and the American people understand that. And the American people understand what Ukraine's fighting for. And all they're asking for is our help. They're not asking for American boots on the ground. Again, I don't think the American people are going to be swayed by one single interview. And I think anybody that watches that interview, I haven't seen whatever's said, need to make sure remember you're listening to Vladimir Putin. And you shouldn't take at face value anything he has to say.
To use the dollar as a tool of foreign policy struggle is one of the biggest strategic mistakes made by the U.S. political leadership. The dollar is the cornerstone of the United States power, but they won't stop printing. What does the debt of $33 trillion tell us about? As soon as the political leadership decided to use the US dollar as a tool of political struggle, a blow was dealt to this American power. I would not like to use any strong language, but it is a stupid thing to do and a grave mistake. Look at what is going on in the world. Even the United States allies are now downsizing their dollar reserves. Seeing this, everyone starts looking for ways to protect themselves. But the fact that the United States applies restrictive measures to certain countries, such as placing restrictions on transactions, freezing assets, etc., causes grave concern and sends a signal to the whole world. Do you even realize what is going on or not? Does anyone in the United States realize this? What are you doing? You are cutting yourself off. All experts say this. Ask any intelligent and thinking person in the United States what the dollar means for the US. You're killing it with your own hands.
Ooh, boy. What's going on, everyone? It's Talk to Ken here today, and we got another analysis for you guys today. We're going to be analyzing the Tucker Carlson interview with Vladimir Putin. I hope you guys watch the full thing for yourselves and just know that I'm just pulling out things that I thought was important out of the interview. I only watched about an hour in. Putin's, whether you agree with him or not, you should approach this. If you're a liberal or you're independent watching this video, I believe you should approach this video as this is what Vladimir Putin believes. Is there any evidence in reality that can justify his position on why he felt threatened by Ukraine? Now, political historians been saying what Putin's just confirming at this point. But there's been, if you don't believe Russia, if you don't believe Putin, there's videos online where you can go to political historians and they can tell you some of the agreements that Putin made with previous presidents. Hey, we will not entrench on your border. We will not make Ukraine part of NATO. That was one of the concerns because remember, Putin's been president for a long time. And we went through multiple administrations as he remained president of Russia. And his main concern was, hey, I don't want any person with nuclear capabilities, and I think Ukraine doesn't have any nuclear capabilities, but if they become part of NATO, then NATO has justification to be like, oh, we want to put nukes on your border because you're an alliance. And that's what Vladimir Putin didn't want to happen. He wanted Ukraine to act as a buffer zone from his border to theirs. And he started talking about the political history of Russia as well. And no one can deny Russia that Ukraine used to be part of Russia. All you have to do is go through history. It used to be a giant-ass empire. It was ruled by kings. But to sit here and pretend that Ukraine was always Ukraine is the same argument that the Palestinians make about Israel. Israel's occupying. Israel is settling. Couldn't Russia make the same argument, political left? And this is the problem I have with you guys. You guys pick and choose y'all don't have any consistency whatsoever. Me, I'm like, hey, look, they there now. That is a country now. Ukraine broke off from Russia. It's a country now. Deal with it. Israel got the land. Israel managed the land better than the Palestinians did. Deal with it. No. Oh, we're entitled to the land. Colonizers. Where's that pressure for Ukraine? None. So I'm not saying. Look, all you have to do is go do your own research. That's all I'm telling you to say. Because what he said, it has merit. And then you saw the intro I showed you. I showed you the establishment perspective on it, the government perspective on it, the U.S. government's perspective on it. And then we show you Vladimir Putin's perspective on it. Remember, Vladimir Putin, and this is how you judge information. Vladimir Putin has no incentive to look favorably at the U.S. So he's going to give you some harsh, like he's going to point out some harsh facts about the U.S. And that's the reality. But these people, man, I don't know. They think we're dumb or something, right? They think we can't judge information and think critically for ourselves because they talk to us like children. They talk to us like sheep. They're the herd. They're the shepherds. They're supposed to lead the herd to where it's supposed to be. I ain't no sheep, and I don't want you guys to be one either. And that requires what? Individual. You have to be an individualist. You can't be a collective. You can't be like black people think this. If you talk standard English, you ain't black. No, you can't think like that. You're an individual that happens to be part of this group. That's it. And it's time that American people get something to judge stuff by. Now let's see the contrast. This is why Putin's more trusted than the mainstream media, because we know the mainstream media has a narrative. We know the mainstream media covers for the Democratic Party. We know the mainstream media is mostly liberal, overwhelmingly liberal. So we know they have a bias take. They have a biased worldview where they omit facts that hurt their perception, that hurt the Democrats' optics. We know the mainstream liberal media does that all the time. And Putin has no incentive to go along with the omission. He's going to bring up facts that the mainstream media omitted. This is why people will trust Putin more than they trust sometimes our own government. Because we want to evaluate the information. It's not up to people on mainstream media to judge what is true or not, what is information and disinformation. This is why this is the biggest authoritarian push I ever seen from the mainstream media, to think that they are the arbiters of truth and they get to judge what's true information and what's not. When they were spewing misinformation about the Biden laptop, COVID, the origins of COVID. This is why there's stats out there. There's some stats out there that people trust Donald Trump more than the mainstream media. You see why? Donald Trump said it came from China. Mainstream media said, no, you're a racist. 2 years later, oh, what do you look at? It came from a lab in Wuhan. Wow. This is why people like Trump. This is why people trust Trump. He said what he means, and he means what he say, regardless if you like it or not. And it's a trade-off with that. Sometimes you're not going to like what the guy says. But I digress. I know I've been ranting a lot against the mainstream media. We're here about my take on the Putin interview with Tucker Carlson. But before, I want to give some context in between. Fox News is the most watched cable news network with the average of 1.85 million viewers per night in prime time. And NBC averages 1.22 viewers. CNN only averages 500,000. Tucker interview with Putin is over 50 million views on X within the first 5 hours. This is the thumbnail, guys. All right. So we're gonna go in some of the takes, some of the videos. Just in Putin, Vladimir Putin suggests that CIA blew up the Nord Stream pipeline during his interview with Tucker Carlson. Putin also said that the U.S. is one of the biggest source of propaganda in the world. Tucker, who blew up Nord Stream? You did. Oh wow. So the reason why I believe Putin here, right? And I mentioned this before. All you have to do is look at the political gain. Who gains the most from Putin not being? Who gains the most from blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline? Whoever benefits the most is most likely the one involved in blowing up in the first place. The U.S. benefit from that because they get to push more in the war. They can blame Russia. They can say Russia's trying to cut everyone off from oil and make the oil crisis even worse. The reason why oil is so cheap right now is because in the back end, Russia is selling their oil at a cheaper price because, you know, they're cut off from a big market, the EU. India's buying it in droves. This is why it's so cheap. And China's buying it. Africa, too. Africa's buying it. Countries in Africa are buying the oil from Russia, too. This BRICS movement that's conglomerating is a big threat to the U.S. And the U.S. is not smart, which, sorry, guys, I got to call out my own team. We're not acting smart right now because we're letting people who are less intelligent than Putin run our country. That's the reality here. We got people in the government that only pretends to look competent. They do everything they can to look smart instead of actually being smart. They're not. All they say is, you're a racist. All they know how to do is call you names. And last time I heard in the debate, the first person to call someone a name usually loses. But let's listen in on some of the clips, and then we'll dive in further on the further reactions to the interview.
Who blew up Nord Stream?
You for sure.
I was busy that day. Nate, do you have I did not blow up Nord Stream. Thank you, though.
У вас лично, может быть, есть алиби, у вас лично.
You personally may have an alibi, but the CIA has no such alibi.
Do you have evidence that NATO or the CIA did it?
Знаете,
You know, I won't get into details, but people always say in such cases, look for someone who is interested. But in this case, we should not only look for someone who is interested, but also for someone who has capabilities. Because there may be many people interested, but not all of them are capable of sinking to the bottom of the Baltic Sea and carrying out this explosion. These two components should be connected. Who is interested and who is capable of doing it?
But I'm confused. I mean, that's the biggest act of industrial terrorism ever, and it's the largest emission of CO2 in history. Okay, so if you had evidence, and presumably given your security services, your intel services, you would, that NATO, the US, CIA, the West, did this, why wouldn't you present it and win a propaganda victory?
In the war of propaganda, it is very difficult to defeat the United States, because the United States controls all the world's media and many European media. The ultimate beneficiary of the biggest European media are American financial institutions. Don't you know that?
Hey, make up your own mind. This should get you like, hey, I don't want to be duped. I want to go do my own research. This is what I'm thinking too. I want to rehash some things. I want to go back into some things. But I do know there's a World Economic Forum. I do know the U.S., Biden, the Democrats specifically are very big pushers of some of the agendas that the WEE, the World Economic Forum pushes, right? Stakeholder capitalism, ESG. These run by national or global organizations, and they're usually run by banks. So he's talking about a cabal of the 1%. I did a video yesterday about the establishment losing control over information. This is one of the cracks. Do your own research. Don't let these people gaslight you into thinking you might believe fake news. Fake news only exists when it's not supported by strong evidence, strong correlation. But if you got multiple data points kind of leading you down the same conclusion, there's a high probability that what you're reading is not misinformation or fake news. Because my point is, I want people to have the ability to figure things out for themselves, not merely just solely trust me. I want to create a community where I can get something wrong and you, the audience, is correcting me and helping me find the information as well. That's the kind of like relationship I would want to have with my community. Not this, oh, you guys listen to me, you're my audience, you believe everything I say is gold. I kind of wanted to be like, hey, I like Kenny. I think Kenny's saying something wrong here. Here, Kenny, I know you like evidence. I know you like proof. Here's some proof and evidence that I think you're wrong here. Or I think you have a misinterpreted take. And I've done that sometimes, especially with education. If you follow this channel on education, I was hard on on public schools. I said, oh, it's your teacher's fault. It's the system's fault. And some of you acknowledge, yes, Kenny, we acknowledge some of the problems. But I had one commenter, I went back and forth with him. And he says, hey, look at the Asians. Asians perform academically consistent regardless of no matter what environment you put them. You put an Asian in public school, they do well. You put an Asian in charter school, they do well. You put an Asian in private school, they do well. Why is that, Kenny? It's the parents. And I didn't want to admit it. I'm like, no, it ain't the parents. Because it's like to me, it's like the chicken or the egg. Are parents like that way because of what the government has done? Or the culture has conditioned the parents to be? Or is because the parents dropped the ball in the first place and it gave an opening for the government to come in. So that's one thing that an audience member helped change my mind on, or at least become more, I guess, nuanced on the subject. That's an example, right? And this is how I think we should reevaluate our knowledge system and see, hey, is there any merit to what Putin is saying? The redheaded libertarian says, I know some people don't like her, but I'm going to agree with her on this take. Whether you agree with Putin or Ukraine or not, We can all agree that the U.S. has made a key strategic error by weaponizing the U.S. dollar, and the SWIFT system of international payments. This is now causing other countries to reduce their exposure to the U.S. dollar and do more trade in alternative currency. I'm just reading it from memory. Yeah, in their own currencies. This will make the U.S. fundamentally weaker as a nation in future years. True or false? Look at the result. If what Putin says is true, is there evidence to support what Putin just said? Yes, there is. There's countries that they're pulling their way from the dollar. There's other countries such as Africa, Saudi Arabia, and China, India, that's trying to pull their resources together to create a challenge to the U.S. dollar. There's people who are interested in the BRICS movement because they see there's too many strings attached by taking foreign aid from the U.S. The U.S., and this is what the Bible says, the borrower is slave to the lender, and the U.S. is treating lending money to foreign countries as a contract to become their servant, their slave. This is why Putin says that America is the leader in propaganda, and you see it. You saw the government official. They tried to tell you, "Oh, no, don't watch the video. Oh, we all know who Putin is." And all I'm saying is, I don't give a damn who the messenger is. Look at the message. Look at the information. Look at the statements. Look at the argument that's being given and evaluate the argument purely on its own, not being influenced by who said it, that is coming out of Putin's mouth. Because if Putin said 2 + 2 is 4, what the mainstream media should report. Putin is a madman. Don't listen to what he says. That's how they report it. Instead of saying 2 + 2 is 4. But Vladimir Putin still, like, I don't think the U.S. media, at least the corporate establishment media, could ever give an honest take, because their job is not to inform you. Their job is to control public perception. That's the job they've been given by the government, in my view. And this is Greg Foreman, Black Conservative Perspective. I can't remember a U.S. president in my lifetime that operates at the same intellectual level as Putin. And that is extremely disturbing. The interview is damning for Americans' democracy experiment. And it's true. Because in our culture, in our political culture, we vote for politicians not for their capabilities, but how closely they align to our tribe, how closely they align to saying what we want them to say, pushing agendas that we care about emotionally instead of what is best for the country logically. And this is not damning just for U.S. presidents, but the people who elect these U.S. presidents. And this is the kind of the problem I have. This is why I kind of wanted Vivek to run, because I think Vivek would have been at the same intellectual level, or if not smarter, than what Putin's doing. You see it. You see Nikki Haley, how she can't even give you 3 providence on Ukraine, but she want us to fund it for so long. You can see some of the illogical statements, the unintelligent statements that Nikki Haley makes, and yet she is second place right now. She will finish second at the end of the South Carolina primary. Why? Because the American people, it's a dumbing down of a nation. That's honestly what I believe. It starts with us. The buck stops with the American voter. And that's what I think I'm trying to do on this channel. I'm trying to raise that political knowledge, that historical knowledge, that cultural knowledge up a bit, because we can't continue down this road. At the descent we're going, there's college kids that can't even answer what 12 times 2 is. 12 times 9 is, sorry. Glenn Greenwald, I like him. Robert F. Kennedy, because, I don't want it to be a one-sided take. I gave you libertarians. I gave you conservatives. Now I'm giving you an old school Democrat. The mainstream media news pundits are making a fuss over the Tucker Putin interview. They don't trust Americans to listen with their own ears and draw their own conclusions. And that's the difference. I do trust you guys to make your own conclusions. That's why I can say freely without having to say both sides, because I have some people in my comment section that will accuse me of that. Oh, can you only looking at it from one point of view? Yeah, mine. Ain't that how you look at the world too? But I trust you. That's the point. That's the difference. I trust you to make your own conclusions about things, right? I trust you to make your own research about these things, and even challenge me on some of that. That's why I'm open for critique, for criticism. That's the only way I can get better as a commentator, as a content creator, as a speaker, as a debater. I only can get better from you guys telling me what to do, not what to do, but how to improve or not. Right? Here's another clip that I got lined up for you guys, and this time I'll make it more full screen. This is how Putin's talking about how presidents get undercut by their agencies, essentially insinuating what? The deep state.
So twice you've described U.S. presidents making decisions and then being undercut by their agency heads. So it sounds like you're describing a system that's not run by the people who are elected in your telling.
Именно так.
That's right.
Конечно,
That's
не
right.
боги.
You seen that? You heard that. All right, this man, look, he's been through multiple administrations. I forgot when I think since the 80s, 1980s, Putin's been president. Right? And here's another misinformation that the mainstream media like to push out, that, real journalists actually go to jail. Evans, I forgot his name, whatever. Glenn Greenwald, when the partisan goons of the corporate media who claim that they hate this information so much that they needed to censor the internet, insisted that Biden's cognitive decline that everyone saw was really just a problem with a stutter. And then this is the documents that came out that, Biden suffering as an elderly man with poor memory, right? Does this give credence to what Putin's saying? I'm just saying, look. All I'm saying is you look for the evidence. You look for something that support what the person is saying, not how you felt about what he said. Right? Remember when the mainstream media ran around with this narrative that Tucker Carlson is a propagandist? He's just a dog. I forgot what they call him. A lap dog. Hillary Clinton. Tucker Carlson spent roughly 10 to 15 minutes imploring Vladimir Putin to release the Wall Street Journal journalist Evans, I'm going to say butcher his last name, vehemently arguing why it's unjust to keep him in a way that no corporate journalist would ever dare to do that with Biden about Assange. Critique noted. Look at this critique. Tucker Carlson spent 10 to 15 minutes. Remember all this dude? I forgot his name. George Scarborough from Morning Joe. He was like, look at Evans. He's going to jail. This is why no one interviews Putin. Tucker Carlson, a day later, comes, hey, I think Vladimir Putin, you should release Evans. It's unjust. It's not moral. And then Glenn, with the haymaker, nailed to the coffin of corporate media, the deuce sign, says, oh, I bet you no corporate journalists will tell Biden to do the same thing for Julian Assange. Because essentially that's what you're doing. Essentially the U.S. government did the same thing Putin did to Evans, to Julian Assange. Why? Because Julian Assange exposed something, right? Evans was about to expose Putin for something, right? Or who knows? But Putin felt threatened enough to jail him. Same thing with Julian Assange. Hypocrisy noted. This is why no one trusts the mainstream media. No matter that, this is why the credibility is on the floor right now. But, I digress. This is just some of my thoughts. Let me hear yours in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.